Welcome to the Global WarWatch Network. The EU just requested over $127 billion in defense loans. Are we witnessing the birth of a European military superpower? With tensions rising, Europe is rearming fast. Here's what it means for global security. Today, we're taking a close look at a really significant development, the Security Action for Europe, or SAFE financial instrument. You, our listener, have shared some fascinating sources on this, and we're going to break down exactly what this momentous shift means for Europe and, well, for the world beyond its borders.
Indeed. And this isn't just, another piece of EU bureaucracy rolling out. It feels like a pivotal moment. We're really observing a fundamental, strategically critical pivot in European defense strategy. The whole geopolitical landscape has shifted so dramatically, hasn't it? And Europe is responding now with an urgency we haven't seen in decades, really reassessing how it handles its security, both collectively and for individual nations. It's not just about spending more money. It's about fundamentally reshaping capabilities to align with this new global reality.
Okay, let's unpack this then. At its core, what precisely is SAFE, this Security Action for Europe financial instrument? And maybe what makes it different from, past attempts at boosting defense cooperation in Europe?
Fundamentally, SAFE-E is it's a new financial tool. It's designed specifically to provide EU-backed long-maturity loans just for defense procurement. Its explicit goal is to give a significant boost, a real push, to the security capabilities of EU member states, helping them reach their defense objectives much, much quicker. What makes it distinct? Well, it tackles a critical bottleneck funding, direct funding. Previous initiatives, they often lack this kind of direct, large-scale financial mechanism that SAFE brings. It's a key pillar of those broader EU plans to ramp up defense investment, the ones announced back in March this year. It's really about leveraging the EU's financial muscle, its collective strength, to enable real, tangible rearmament.
And you mentioned, or the sources mentioned, competitively priced loans. What does that actually mean for the member states? Is it just about getting lower interest rates than they could alone, or is there something more strategic to it?
That's a really good clarifying question. Yeah. When we talk about competitively priced, it basically means member states can likely access funds at more favorable interest rates than they might get borrowing individually on the capital markets. The EU, as a bloc, it generally has a higher credit rating than many individual members. So by issuing bonds for SAFE on behalf of everyone, the EU can attract more investors, get better terms, and then, pass those savings on. It's definitely a strategic advantage because it lowers the cost of borrowing for defense, makes these critical investments more financially viable, more sustainable, over the long haul. It's smart money, really.
That's smart money. I like that. Because, here's where it really hits home for me. The sheer scale. How much money are we actually talking about? The numbers and the sources are just staggering, especially when you put them into context.
They really are. Staggering is the right word. SAFE has the capacity to provide up to $150 billion in these defense loans. And the immediate interest, it's been huge. As of July 30th, so just recently, 18 EU member states have already signaled concrete interest in at least $127 billion. That's, roughly $146 billion US dollars?
Wow.
Yeah. And to give you some perspective, Germany's entire defense budget for 2024 was around $70 billion. So this single fund, just in the initial request, represents almost double that amount. But for the whole bloc, it's a massive commitment right out of the gate. It signals a really profound shift, moving away from just individual national defense spending towards something more coordinated, more financially integrated.
That really does help visualize the scale. Okay, so what does this huge financial commitment truly signify for Europe's defense goals, both for individual nations and collectively for the EU?
Well, the EU Commissioner for Defense and Space, Andrius Kubilius, he summed it up quite well, I think. He called this strong interest a major step towards achieving our defense goals quickly and decisively. So what that tells us is this isn't about, slow incremental upgrades or long-planned expansions. No, this is about facilitating urgent, large-scale procurement. It's designed to rapidly enhance capabilities right across the board. It signals a clear shift away from that sort of peace dividend thinking of the past few decades towards a really determined effort to rebuild and modernize military capabilities at speed, making sure Europe can respond to current and emerging threats much faster and more effectively.
18 countries expressing interest. That's significant buy-in. Can you give us a sense of who's really leading the charge here? Which nations are driving this and maybe why they seem to be at the forefront?
Yeah, the sources specifically name Italy, Poland, Spain, and France as being among those showing significant early interest. And their engagement, doesn't seem coincidental. It underlines this widespread commitment, sure, but it also probably highlights individual strategic priorities. Poland, for instance. Given its location, its proximity to the war in Ukraine, and its, historically strong focus on conventional defense, they're obviously keen to rapidly modernize and expand their forces.
Makes sense.
Right. And France, with its long-standing ambition for European strategic autonomy, plus its strong defense industry, likely sees this as a way to further boost European defense manufacturing. Italy and Spain, too, are clearly looking to upgrade their capabilities and enhance their own industrial roles. So these nations, they're definitely among the primary beneficiaries and key participants right in this initial phase of SAFE. They recognize the urgency and, well, the financial advantage.
Okay, that raises an important point then. Is this instrument only for EU member states, or can other nations get involved somehow? And how does that mesh with existing alliances like NATO, for instance?
That's a crucial distinction, yeah. So the direct SAFE loans, those are only for EU countries, full stop. However, the instrument is designed quite explicitly to foster broader cooperation and interoperability. So common procurement projects, which are really a major focus of SAFE, can involve other partners. Specifically, Ukraine and the EFF countries, that's Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, they are eligible to participate in these common procurement initiatives alongside EU member states.
Ah, okay. So Ukraine can be part of the buying consortia.
Exactly, which is significant, right? It directly supports Ukraine's defense needs and integrates these key European partners more closely. And beyond that, countries with existing security and defense partnerships with the EU, think the UK, Canada, South Korea, Japan. They can also participate in these common procurement projects, but, and this is the key part, they are not eligible to receive the SAFE ones themselves.
Right. Only EU members get the EU money.
Precisely. So the structure, it acknowledges the strategic importance of cooperating with global allies, especially within NATO, of course. But it maintains the financial and political, let's say, integrity of the EU's own defense push. You could argue it creates a stronger European pillar within NATO, maybe leads to more balanced burden sharing eventually. But it also, raises questions about potential overlap or how best to coordinate everything to avoid duplicating effort. That's the challenge.
So if non-EU countries can join in the buying but not get the loans, how did these loans actually work in practice? What kind of procurement are they supporting? And what's the mechanism to get these capabilities, into the hands of member states effectively?
Well, SAFE uses a sort of two-pronged approach. Its primary and definitely the long-term focus is on promoting common procurement. So encouraging collaboration between at least two member states, or as we said, with Ukraine or the EEE-IFTA countries. The idea there is to foster more interoperable, more standardized defense systems across Europe. Imagine multiple nations pooling resources to buy the same type of fighter jet or the same missile defense system.
Yeah, economies of scale, shared logistics.
Exactly. It enhances collective security through shared equipment, shared logistics, shared training. It's about building a more cohesive European defense architecture over time. However, the sources are clear that current geopolitical realities demand immediate action too. So SAFE will also temporarily support procurements by individual member states.
Ah, so there's flexibility.
Yes, and that flexibility is vital right now. It ensures that critical assets can be delivered quickly to address immediate national needs. Lets countries shore up their defenses fast. But the balance is delicate, right? Pushing for long-term integration while also providing those immediate national security boosts. The emphasis, though, is definitely on temporary for the individual procurement. It underscores the EU's strategic push towards greater collective defense in the long run.
That makes sense. Balancing the urgent with the important, so to speak. But for any of this to happen, there needs to be a clear timeline. What are the key deadlines for countries to get their formal applications in?
Yes, there's a very clear deadline for this initial phase. EU member states have until the end of November 2025. That's the date to formally submit their requests for the SAFE loans and, crucially, their national defense investment plans alongside them.
End of November 2025.
Okay. Yeah, and that deadline is essential. It allows the European Commission to really assess the full demand for funds, understand the collective strategic direction everyone's aiming for, and then prepare to raise the necessary capital on the international markets. They need to know the total appetite, the total sum required before they can issue the bonds to actually finance it all. It's a critical step to turn all this intent into actual financial capacity.
This definitely sounds like a significant push for, European defense autonomy, reducing reliance on outside suppliers. Are there specific, quite strict rules about where the components for this equipment have to come from?
Absolutely. And this is one of the most strategically important details, I think. Under the eligibility conditions for getting these safe loans, the procurement contracts have to ensure that no more than 35% of the component costs come from outside the EU, Ukraine, or those EEA, EFTA countries.
35% max from outside.
Yeah. Right. And that's not just a technicality. It's a very strong signal of intent regarding strategic autonomy. It's designed specifically to funnel the vast majority of these defense spending euros back into the European industrial base. Keep the money and the jobs and the know-how within Europe as much as possible.
What's fascinating there is the strategic implication of that 35% rule. It's not just about the money, is it? It sounds like it could fundamentally reshape the global defense industry landscape.
Precisely. You've hit the nail on the head. This rule is, well, it's a direct challenge to the traditional dominance of non-EU defense giants. Particularly, let's be frank, those from the United States who've historically been Europe's main suppliers for a lot of kit. It aims squarely at strengthening the European defense industrial base, fostering homegrown innovation, and significantly cutting those external dependencies in critical defense manufacturing areas. This could genuinely lead to a much more competitive, integrated European defense ecosystem. Now, for companies outside Europe, it means they either need to establish significant manufacturing capabilities within the EU, or they need to partner much more extensively with European firms to meet these sourcing criteria.
So it forces investment or partnership.
Exactly. It's about building resilience and self-sufficiency from within. But yeah, it will undoubtedly create some friction with long-standing defense partners who now face new hurdles to access the European market. It's a definite shift.
And are there even stricter rules for certain types of military gear? The sources mention critical equipment, implying an even higher bar for European control.
Yes, absolutely. For what they define as truly critical equipment, the conditions get even tighter. This includes highly sensitive vital categories like air and missile defense systems, maritime surface and underwater capabilities, think warships, submarines, and also strategic enablers like air-to-air refueling tankers, things you absolutely need. For these essential defense assets, the rule is that the contractors must be able to modify, upgrade, and even replicate the equipment if needed without any non-EU restrictions whatsoever.
Without any non-EU restrictions.
Yeah.
Okay, what does that actually mean in practice? What kind of restrictions are we talking about?
It's really all about ensuring complete, unfettered control and adaptability, securing long-term operational independence. So, in practice, non-EU restrictions could mean things like limitations on accessing software source code or needing specific maintenance tools only available from the non-EU supplier, or maybe the inability to domestically produce critical spare parts without a foreign license. Historically, Europe has sometimes found itself dependent on non-EU suppliers for essential upgrades or maintenance, which obviously can create vulnerabilities, especially in a crisis.
Right. You don't want your key systems dependent on someone else's goodwill or availability.
Exactly. So this stricter rule, it promotes much greater control, adaptability, and long-term security for these really essential defense assets. It ensures critical systems can be maintained, upgraded, evolved, without any external interference or reliance. It's another step moving Europe away from just being a customer towards being a co-developer and ultimately a controller of its own high-end defense technology.
So bring this all together. What does this mean for you, the listener, and for global security more broadly? How does this massive financial instrument, SAFE, fit into the wider geopolitical picture we're all trying to navigate? Is Europe really on a path to becoming a military superpower?
Look, this development is undeniably a profound step in Europe's evolving defense posture. There's no question about that. It's clearly driven by recent events, the war in Ukraine being the most obvious catalyst, and this pressing need for a much more robust, more responsive defense capability. So this isn't just some internal EU financial shuffling. It signals a really significant shift in how Europe views its security responsibilities and its own capabilities on the world stage. Now, whether it leads to a quote-unquote military superpower, well, that depends heavily on your definition, doesn't it? But it certainly points towards a much more capable, much more autonomous, and potentially more unified European defense actor in the future.
Okay, and this move, it aims to boost both collective and individual defense, strengthen the industrial base. What are the potential impacts on existing alliances, particularly NATO, and, the global power dynamics we've sort of become accustomed to? Could it also create maybe some friction or even unintended consequences, perhaps?
It certainly has the potential to reshape those dynamics quite significantly.
Yes.
By promoting greater interoperability and standardization within Europe, and by working towards a more self-sufficient defense capability, SAFE could, theoretically, lead to a stronger, more unified European defense pillar within NATO.
A stronger European arm of NATO.
Potentially, yes, which could mean more balanced burden sharing with the United States, maybe freeing up U.S. resources to focus on other global priorities like the Indo-Pacific. However, it also definitely raises questions about, well, potential duplication of capabilities if it's not carefully coordinated between the EU and NATO. And also how this new European push for self-reliance might influence the U.S.'s own strategic focus on the continent long term.
Interesting dynamics there.
Absolutely. And furthermore, this level of rearmament, this industrial shift, it will undoubtedly influence relationships with other global powers too. How will Russia view a more heavily armed, more industrially self-sufficient Europe right on its doorstep? What are the implications for China, especially as Europe strengthens things like its maritime and air defense capabilities? It also forces us, I think, to consider that fine line between strategic autonomy, which Europe clearly wants, and potential strategic divergence from long-standing allies within existing alliances. The goal, as the sources imply, is definitely enhanced capacity and security, but the journey to get there, that will certainly involve navigating some pretty complex geopolitical waters, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Okay, a final thought then for you, our listener, to consider. As Europe strengthens its defense capabilities and its autonomy through initiatives like SAFE, really prioritizing those internal supply chains and common procurement, how might this truly reshape the balance of power and security responsibilities on the global stage? Not just in purely military terms, but also perhaps in economic and diplomatic influence in the coming years. Something to reflect on. Thank you for joining us for this essential discussion on Europe's evolving defense strategy. We really hope you feel better informed about the EU's Security Action for Europe financial instrument, and thank you especially to our expert for sharing your insights today.
My pleasure. It's a critical topic.
If you found this discussion insightful, please do remember to like, share, and subscribe to the Global WarWatch Network. It really helps us reach more listeners like you. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Please share them in the comment section below. You can also join the conversation on our social media channels. All the links you need are provided in the description. Thanks again for tuning in.